Let's talk about the Black Phone 2 and what exactly is this story going to be about, as well as some wild theories I've come across the interwebs as well. So before we get into it, hit the subscribe button. Let's get to 50,000 subscribers. That's our big goal. Summer Wing starts tomorrow. Be tuned in for some announcements about what that's going to mean for the channel. Very exciting stuff as well. But let's get into the Black Phone 2, and we've already gotten a trailer. I already did a breakdown for that trailer. If you want to go watch that, go watch that. I'll go back to a couple of things here and there as well. But let's talk about the Black Phone 2, which is a sequel to the very, very successful first Black Phone movie, which grossed an insane amount of money. There's no way they weren't going to come back for a sequel, although Scott Derrickson actually said that yeah, if Joe Hill, who is the author of the original short story, came to us with an idea, we were going to be there. And Joe Hill, sure enough, is here with the idea. So what exactly is this idea? So let's read a little bit about what it says on the website. Four-time Academy Award nominee Ethan Hawke returns to the most sinister role of his career as the Grabber seeks vengeance on Finn, played by Mason Thames, where you just saw him in How to Train Your Dragon. From Beyond the Grave by menacing Finn's younger sister Gwen, played by Madeleine McGraw. The McGraw sisters are all over the summer horror with Megan, with Violet McGraw just recently. So it says, as Finn, now 17, struggles with his life after captivity, the headstrong 15-year-old Gwen begins receiving calls in her dreams from the Black Phone and seeing disturbing visions of three boys being stalked at a winter camp known as Alpine Lake. Determined to solve the mystery and end the torment for both her and her brother, Gwen persuades Finn to visit the camp during a winter storm. There she uncovers a shattering intersection between the Grabber and her own family's history. Together, she and Finn must confront a killer who has grown more powerful in death and more significant to them than either could imagine. From returning visionary writer and director Scott Derrickson, Black Phone 2 is written again by Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, based on characters created by Joe Hill. The film will be produced by Jason Blum, Derrickson, and Cargill, and executive producers are Joe Hill, Adam Hendricks, and Ryan Turek. So, very excited for this film, and of course that little synopsis makes us go deep into the theories, and some of the theories that I've seen float around ever since the first Black Phone came out all those years ago. Let's get into some of them and what exactly could they turn out to be. So I think the biggest thing from that trailer itself is this new setting, this environment where we see a snowy, whiteout, almost like frigid and bleak look to the film, which I really love that they're really switching it up from what we saw previously. Not to say that the last film was like rainbows and sunshine, but it is very different when you add the snow factor into this. But I think the biggest thing so many people are talking about is what it says right here when it says that she uncovers a shattering intersection between the Grabber and her own family's history. So the question now becomes, what exactly is going to be Finney and Gwen and also the Grabber's connection here? So let's start off with something I immediately thought of myself, and that this could just be part of their family. So in the first film, we do hear the father talk about Gwen having these visions and almost comparing it to something her mother also had. Now it seems that Gwen has some sort of psychic intuition, of course. She's able to sort of be, I don't know if we should call it clairvoyant, or if it's something to do with her being able to sort of see beyond what anybody can see, or whatever you want to call it, right? There's many different words for it. But she is in tune with a spiritual world of sorts. Now, the father also says the mother was doing the same thing, and so that has me thinking that this is something that runs in the family. Finney, of course, also is very much so in tune with a spiritual, psychic like world sense of sorts, as he's able to communicate with these boys that ultimately met a very grisly fate from the Grabber at some point. But there's somebody else who makes a reference to being able to sort of hear the phone as well, and the only people that can hear the phone are people who are tapped into this spiritual world, and that's actually the Grabber himself, as well, as he tells Finney he's heard the phone sometimes here and there, but blames it on like maybe some static electricity or something in the house, not really the phone itself working like that. And so that has me wondering if in some way or possible scenario the Grabber could be a family member of Finney and Gwen in connection with their mother, and their mother having these abilities as well according to their father. Could that mean that her brother the Grabber also has this? Maybe he was estranged. Now, one thing we know about the Grabber and his whole family for the most part from this first film and story is that the Grabber has a brother, but he also had a father who was very abusive to him, but we never hear anything talked about the mother. So my understanding here would be, what if the mother sort of ran away from the Grabber's father and she also had a child, and so they later on grew up and maybe never knew what happened or any of that if the father was abusive, right? And this daughter that the mother had would eventually become Finney and Gwen's mother, and unbeknownst to everybody, including the Grabber at that point and also Finney and Gwen's mother, the Grabber and them were like half siblings of sorts. So that's my biggest like question here is, is that the connection here? Now, a very interesting theory I saw floating around, and I'm going to get deeper into this in a whole other video. This is just me spitballing here some ideas that I have for what exactly could be happening here. Is people online are theorizing that in some multiverse like convergence of sorts story, that the grabber could indeed just be Finney from the future and has found his way into this world where Finney from the past exists. It gets very convoluted, I know, it's kind of crazy, but I kind of like it too at the same time. Just how insane this would be. And that would explain why Gwen has a connection to the grabber even in the second film, as the grabber's already dead, and that would explain what's going on here. Maybe Finney was taking out who he would eventually become if said abuse from their father and stuff continued, and that would be the grabber. But I don't know, it gets kind of convoluted, but I just wanted to throw that one out there because I found it online and I was just like, this is kind of interesting. If they can pull this one off, it'd be one of the most insane storylines I've ever seen in a horror film, and I'm definitely like curious if that would be able to be pulled off in a way that just didn't feel so like jarring and confusing, especially to general audiences who are just going to go see the next like horror movie, right, and don't really want to keep up with things. So that's a possibility there that I've seen float around. I'm still sticking with probably a family member that kind of got lost and muddled because of certain things that happened, but let me know what you think about that crazy theory that this could actually be Finney in the future. It's wild, it's insane, and if it works, kudos to everybody who makes that work. But let me know what you think about that as well. But what we do know for sure is that Finney will have to go out to this camp. The grabber is back in sort of a Freddy Krueger-esque style where he's able to infiltrate the head and dreams of the people he is preying upon. Gwen and the grabber have a certain connection together. It seems stronger than what Finney and the grabber would have, which I find interesting because Finney was the one who killed the grabber in the first Black Phone. So that kind of makes it an interesting choice to have Gwen and the grabber have that sort of connection of sorts, and maybe the grabber feels some sort of like resentment towards Gwen because she was the one that was able to find Finney as well. So let's see what happens. Very curious for the Black Phone 2. We will make another video in the coming weeks talking about some of these theories and laying it down a little bit stronger, the case for them. I'm going to rewatch the first film. I haven't watched it, I would say, in about a couple of years, and I do want to freshen up on it, so stay tuned for that video. We'll discuss it and talk about it and some things maybe I noticed now after learning about the Black Phone 2 and what it's about, as well as talking about it that I didn't notice on my first watch. Stay tuned for that video. We do have Jurassic World Rebirth reactions coming out tonight. We're going to go see the screening, so super excited about that one, and a full review for you out tomorrow, as well as talk about what the sequels could look like, as well as more 28 years later talk, because we're not done with that movie just yet. But as always, I am going to see you next time. Hit the subscribe and notification bell. Summer Ween starts tomorrow. 50,000 subscribers is the goal for the summer. Let's have a good one. I'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.